is really the major meat, I would say. Oh, let's make sure I don't have any. There we go. I can hear is it mine? Let's see. Oh, it is. It's been a while. There we go. All better. Okay, sorry about that. So yes, this is kind of the meat of our plan that we are putting together. It's the piece that will include goals, actions, the project opportunities that we'll identify over the next 6 years, and selection criteria for artists and artwork. So after we had the first couple of workshops, we came away with a couple elements or a couple kind of high-level pieces that we were calling the public art pillars and the framing statements. We used those to develop these draft elements of the section, which we'll be reviewing tonight. We're going to discuss the goals, actions, and selection criteria. I know I keep promising that we'll get into project opportunities. It is on the horizon. We are just waiting until the 2030 CIP is released, or draft CIP is released, which will happen this fall. So stay tuned. So the first piece, the goals for the Mercer Island Public Art Program. So these were included in your exhibit. I'm gonna share them now and then hopefully gather some feedback from you all. Again, hoping just to get high-level feedback tonight. We'll bring a refined draft back to you all in October for another review. So the identified goals based on the public art pillars and framing statements exercises. Through public art, the Mercer Island Arts Council seeks to spark curiosity where Mercer Island residents live, gather, and play, cultivate community pride, civic engagement, high quality of life, and social connection, share Mercer Island's rich history, natural beauty, diverse community, and local creativity with island residents and visitors, provide accessible, inclusive, and safe public art experiences for people of all abilities, and steward a public art collection that future generations can sustainably enjoy, engage with, and enhance. So again, a lot of these words probably sound very familiar because they came out of all of the different exercises we've done over the last couple of months. And these are really meant to be kind of the high-level guiding goals or principles for the public art program. At the end of the next 6 years, if we've done our job in implementing a public art program, we will have achieved these goals in some degree. So I'm going to stop there and open it up to you all for feedback on these. Do they sound accurate? Do they sound like something's missing? Do they sound like what we've been talking about for the past few months?
Yes, I would just like to ask my fellow members here. So we've had this discussion about diversity, equity, inclusion in our multiple meetings, actually, for some time now. And so the reason for that discussion is to ensure that all parts of our community feel as though they're included and have opportunities to share their values and their experiences. And so I guess my question is this statement or these series of statements, these goals, are they welcoming enough? And is it obvious enough that all members of our community of all types, rich or poor, or all religious backgrounds, immigrant backgrounds, and so forth, do they all feel as though they have been invited to participate in in the artistic life of our community? If they were to read this statement, is the language clear enough that they'd say, yeah, I can join in too? And so that's a question. My personal feeling is that, we have used these three different words, diversity, equity, and inclusion, in our past discussions, which do kind of have they have clear connotations related to them, relating to all members of communities being included. So I see we have the phrase diverse community, and that's really, is that sufficient? Do you feel as though anything additional should be included in these goals so that all groups in our community will feel as though they're invited to participate and contribute to discussions about arts on the island?
I think listening to what you're saying, I'm focusing in on the fourth bullet point, provide accessible, inclusive, and safe public art experiences for people of all abilities. I think we could expand that. I think it's not just our goal to for people to experience art, but also to participate in it. So I would add experiences or provide accessible, inclusive, and public art experiences, and participate doesn't really fit there, but incorporate participation into that bullet point, and then also expand that it's for people of not just all abilities, but backgrounds, abilities and means, something to that effect.
Yes, I second those council's suggestion that I think, okay, I think it will be more clear if we can add people of all abilities and social and economic background. That will be more clear because from my own experience as first generation immigrant, if I can see those more clear stated, I will feel really welcomed. But yeah, Sarah, I think you did really good job in summarize those goals. Thank you.
So we could add the word backgrounds and socioeconomic status, and what other modifier might we add? Maybe one additional modifier to that fourth bullet point.
So you're asking for us to come up with another one, or you're saying though you would feel better if it said abilities, socioeconomic.
It says, yeah, provide accessible, inclusive, and safe public art experiences for people from all backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses.
Are we still saying about? Are you suggesting?
Abilities.
I would just keep abilities.
Okay, just those three. You think that's sufficient?
I mean, the challenge obviously is like, yeah, I mean, who else are we trying to support? And I think that, I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, like what a exhaustive list would be to include various groups. I mean, I like having abilities. I know that like accessibility and inclusivity is like a big thing, specifically in terms of like, I know we've talked about this like with parks and like trying to like make sure that the parks are can be accessed by everyone. But yeah, like you're saying, like there's all these different groups of characteristics that might matter. I mean, so we've come up with three. I mean, does anyone else have an opinion about adding more, removing any of those, modifying the section? Sarah, do you have are we okay with this, or are you?
No, I think this is good. I can certainly I agree that that bullet in particular is a little vague, so I like what you all have provided in terms of socioeconomic status, backgrounds. We can think a little bit more about maybe a fourth one, adding in with abilities. I think one thing I really liked that you said, Jonathan, was invite. Because I do feel, looking at these again, I am seeing a lot, and obviously, you know, as the stewards of the public art program, the city and the Arts Council is in charge of providing public art experiences. But I think the word invite to me also, it really hits more at that participatory component. So I don't know if that is one, a bullet to add, a goal to add, or maybe to even kind of play with this fourth bullet a little differently, as opposed to kind of just providing, but inviting others in to help create experiences and to participate in the actual practice of making art. So I kind of want to think on that one a little more, if others are interested in going down that idea of trying to include something that really hints more at the participatory component of what you want to do with the public art program.
And
Sorry, Suzanne, did you have a
Well,
comment? Can we just let her
I-
go once?
Yeah.
When you say diverse in that third one, what's popping in everyone's mind? I mean, do we need to define that diverse culturally and religiously and socioeconomically? Or, I mean, when I read diverse there, I thought diverse, you know, so, and I don't want the fourth bullet to get diluted too much, because I think it's really important, you know, that we include all abilities in age groups, and again, ability could even be ability to pay or ability to get there physically, or, you know, so I don't know. When you start getting really, really specific, then you got to get really specific. And this is supposed to be really high level. So when I like what you said about cultural. I think that's worth mentioning, but then I'm like, oh God, well, what about religious, you know, or is religious cultural? So I thought you pretty well had it nailed, but that's just high level look at it.
Yeah, diverse community. I mean, it could be from 30 years ago in terms of, you know, I just think that in the world we live in now, we need to be a little bit more, make a little bit more of an effort to reach out to groups that have up to this point not felt included in some fashion. So if we are going to be coming back and you're going to be revising that, so maybe we can just keep that in mind as a way to, you know, to see if we can find the right words. I understand what you're saying about dilution and
Well, and
lack
maybe
of
under the
specificity.
last item, this steward a public art collection, maybe there is this kind of a second sentence that, you know, and invite, I like the idea of and invite. But we've already said include, but I don't know. I mean, and invite.
Ted, did you want to chime in?
I guess one thing that comes to mind when listening to the discussion is the difference between equity or between diversity and inclusion. I think of like when I went to college at the University of Virginia, it was a very diverse campus. But when we sat down to lunch, there were tables that were all one race, and there wasn't as much inclusion in that we wouldn't sit, you know, with elbow to elbow with people from different races. But there was definitely a lot of diversity there. So I think expressing both the concepts of valuing the diversity on the island and at the same time expressing the value of inclusion to make sure that not only are we all here, but that we all want to spend time with each other and learn about each other's religions and backgrounds and races and the like. So I want to make sure that both the diversity and the inclusion are considered and considered separately in here. So, because there really are different concepts to it.
I mean, I just would say one thing, like, I mean, in terms of Suzanne's point about the different bullet points, I mean, as written, bullet point 4 is like literal access. Like, can people actually get there even if they wanted to? And what I am sort of hearing from some of these other things is it's more about like, are we representing people? Are we making something that people would even want to go and see in the first place? Do they see themselves in it? And so I don't know if that's in bullet 4 or if it should be a new bullet or if it should be included in some of these other things. But I mean, that's what I'm hearing that maybe we're missing, because like the bullet point 3 with the diverse community, we're saying share the history of people from the past that was diverse. But that's different than making sure that people today feel represented. I don't know if that, Jonathan, you brought this up. I don't know if you think that that's accurate, but I mean, in terms of like how we could explain this is like, it's more about, do people feel represented or welcome?
Um,
I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that we're giving Sarah enough direction, basically, so that when she comes back with this, she's getting us closer to what we want.
so yeah, just to like to ask, maybe Sarah, for your clarification on exactly what art experiences means. Is that just attending an event, or does that include not only experiencing someone else's creation, but actually creating something yourself? Yeah, so I'm curious
Mhm.
about, and maybe we needed to clearly differentiate on
Mhm.
that one.
Yeah, I think for that, I meant sort of both sides. So either, presenting opportunities for people to see art, experience art, participate in art, create art. So it is kind of a catch-all. But I do think that there's, even by just maybe tweaking some language around participation, representation, and feeling welcome, I think that I can get closer to that idea of really creating a welcoming environment, a program where people feel seen and just welcome to participate. So this has been really helpful.
Any other comments before Sarah continues?
Okay. Okay, so for the goals, of course, we'll come back in October and present a refined approach. So now let's move on to the ones that are a little bit meatier, which are the focused actions. So if you kind of think of, we start with the goals and then what are maybe some actions that we are going to undertake in order to reach those goals. That's what these are meant to be, and really focused in the sense that we only have 6 years. So over the span of this work plan, so we want to make sure that we are relatively narrow, but not too narrow to, eliminate opportunities as they arise. I will say too that as I've been envisioning this work plan, I think that over time, we're going to talk later in this process, like how are we going to update the plan? Because we want this to be like our other city work plans, internal work plans, a living document that can adjust and evolve over the 6 years. I see the focused actions as probably being the best opportunity to make, minor to almost major tweaks over, each kind of 2-year period during the 6-year work plan. So keep that in mind. But based on all of the exercises we did already through this process, the focused actions we came up with, to work towards these goals over the next 6 years, the city will focus the public art work plan on the following actions. Activate existing public art installations and spaces with performance, special events, and community-led projects that raise awareness of the public art collection and educate about its many offerings. Select locations for public art installations and activations that provide equitable access to residents, create a destination for visitors, and integrate public art into its surroundings. Examples could include the Greta Hackett Outdoor Sculpture Gallery, which is centrally located on the island, and the South End, which lacks a concentration of public art currently. Prioritize diverse and innovative artists, forms of expressions, and mediums, including those not currently represented in the public art collection when developing new public art projects. Embrace Mercer Island's history, natural environment, and local values when identifying themes for new public art projects. Provide opportunities for island residents, community organizations, and local artists to collaborate in developing and implementing public art projects, and evaluate project opportunities not only for their immediate impact, but also for their potential to endure and inspire future generations. Considerations will include financial, environmental, and cultural sustainability, as well as long-term maintenance requirements. And so here are all of these on one screen. And yeah, like with the goals, I'm hopeful that you all can provide feedback. I will also say, I think through this process, I went back and forth a little bit of, do we just do high level with the goals, or do we do something a little more specific? Like I've tried to do here with the focused actions. They are kind of similar, but a little, not necessarily exactly the same. So I am also open, if you all feel like the goals are enough or the actions are enough, if things feel redundant, that's fine too. We can refine it where, we just either try to find a hybrid of these things or choose goals over actions or vice versa. So that's some additional context for the development of these.
Anyone have feedback to start us off?
So I kind of looked at this. I did see a lot of overlap with the goals, and maybe lacking some specificity on what that action really is. When I thought about the action plan, of just taking a step back of what I really think should be incorporated in there, I had kind of three separate buckets. One of which was focusing on funding strategies. So we do have the 1% for the arts, but I think there's also strategies around pursuing grants, nonprofit funding, and then also private donations and contributions do make up a large portion of our current makeup of public art, and we want to encourage that to continue. The second bucket was developing a list of art opportunities. I think a big part of that, due to the nature of the 1% for the arts, dovetails off of the capital improvements. I also think there's benefit to being on our front foot in terms of identifying big impact areas. And, if we have those opportunities published, it may spur somebody to contribute, or if a grant comes up, then we're in a good position to kind of pitch that as a part of the grant process. And then my third bullet point was creating action items around generating opportunities for public engagement. So using art sites for events and gatherings, engaging community partners during art development, and then amplifying local arts organizations and artists.
Yeah, I think through that, that all is really great, JB. And I think you are, I did struggle a lot with, do we do these goals that are high level, or do we do something like focus actions? So I thought, let's put it all out there and see what you all think. And if there's room to simplify, I am all for room to simplify.
Yeah, I have a question about the last bullet point. So you talk about considerations will include financial, environmental, and cultural sustainability, as well as long-term maintenance requirements. So, we'll use the words financial, environmental, and cultural sustainability. Are we only referring to a project, or is it a broader kind of sustainability that we're talking about? And then after that, it says as well as long-term maintenance requirements. So is it just sustainability of a specific piece of art, a specific work versus sustainability to build a sustainable community? And I think, previous discussions, we talked about the importance of sustainability as a community value, not just as a concept we use to talk about making sure that a statue isn't damaged. So, I was curious what your meaning was here, or maybe there's some way to make it a little bit clearer.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for this one, I was thinking specifically about, again, some of those conversations we've had in terms of, the brass tacks of maintenance. So will a sculpture be maintainable over a certain amount of time? That's kind of the long-term maintenance requirement, the physical maintenance requirement. But the other pieces really get a little more at kind of the context and values conversation. So especially the environmental and cultural components. So, I believe that I've heard a lot through this process that you all are really interested in creating new works of art or new experiences with existing works of art that are both kind of the community now, of the time that we're in right now. So speak to the community we have right now, but also look forward to maybe what the community wants to be, or, who will be here in the future. So who can participate. That idea of like, does the context still matter? Will it still matter in 30 years? We can't necessarily evaluate that really closely for every project because we don't necessarily know like what people are going to be interested in 30 years, or who all is going to live here, new residents and everything. But I think having more of this one is meant to capture more of the long view of the public art program, as opposed to, oh, like, let's put a sculpture here kind of thing. Like really being intentional about what the community needs and what the community is looking for going forward out of the program. So I think, it is specific to public art projects. So for instance, I think using the example of the community member who recently emailed about doing a mural on the lid, thinking about, is this something that, what are sort of the long-term impacts of a project like that? If we engaged local youth to help create the mural, well, in 20 years, those kids can come back and see the project. So does that have value, knowing that this is something that they participated in a long time ago as part of their community, and it's still here, it has longevity. So things like that, I think, not, we've talked a lot about like financial, environmental, and cultural is 3 separate sustainability buckets. So that's why those are included in there as well. But not necessarily married to those 3 either.
Comments? I just didn't know if maybe the "and" was supposed to be after cultural, so maybe considerations will include financial, environmental, cultural, and sustainability, because I think Jonathan's sustainability is environmental sustainability, isn't it? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, so sustainability is fundamentally about not depleting resources, not to maintain resources so future generations can also enjoy them. And that includes cultural resources, it includes social resources. So, future generations can, not just for an individual piece of art, but in general, I think if you talk to a high school student, for instance, they talk about sustainability, they're thinking about, am I going to have the ability to enjoy the fruits of this planet in the future? And so sustainability is about protecting a specific piece of art, but it's also about encouraging people to not deplete, to sustain, to not destroy, and to protect for future generations in a broader way than just protecting specific artworks.
Okay, so then to Jamie's point, I did, so the whole, this whole slide, I kind of like, I look at focused actions for the 6-year work plan should, I mean, just giving you my idea, but should be letting city council know what we want. And this is very broad and kind of repetitive from the previous goals. So I would go with the previous goals and I would go into, I think that's great points like funding opportunities and, you know, creating an action plan. And I probably would, if it was me, I'd probably just do away with this altogether and say, what do we want to get done in the next 6 years? I think if it's too wordy and too vague, I feel like nothing will get done.
Go ahead.
I have a couple of thoughts. The first one is a small one. On the third item, there is like the forms of expression and mediums. I feel like the mediums are included in the forms of expression. Maybe we can delete that and simplify the wording. And my second thought is the fourth item, the local value. When I read that, if I don't have any background of our previous discussion, for any residents, if they read that, would have, it's a little bit vague. Not sure what is local value exactly. Maybe Mercer Island is family oriented, or is that can think about that. And the third one, I think, may we think about like reaching out, like outreaching to the different groups on Mercer Island as part of Arts Council or cities work. I know we have lots of activities and events. I'm thinking whether we can have some like just like how we can have a procedure or practice about how we can have dialogue with the community and thinking of how hear what they want and get the feedback from them. And also we have different, we talk about the diversity and the inclusive. So if we have different holidays for different group of people, so like those culture, how Arts Council can like participate in that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think some of the aspects of what's in the current bullet point list, there's a lot of valuable information in there that does reflect our conversations, and in my opinion, it's kind of skipping ahead to the next agenda item, but the artwork and the artist selection criteria and those pillars seem to have overlap with some of those, you know, what we're going to consider or emphasize or prioritize. I think that kind of filters down to that section, and then it allows this action section to be a little more specific or targeted in what action we're taking.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it feels like, I mean, and this has sort of already been said, but I mean, bring up this third section where, yeah, it feels like there's arguably just too much overlap between these three things. And what what is each of these three things? And I think it would be clearer for us in order to make something happen if it was clear what the function was for these. And so maybe the overlap we can pull out of these focused actions and either move them to the first one, move them to the third one, or get rid of them in order to try to make this unique from the other, clearly unique from the other two in terms of what the purpose is of the focused actions. Ted, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I'm noticing is other than the number 6 in the 6-year plan, there are no numbers on the page. It's kind of all words. And when I think about goals, I think about specific actions, I think about dates, I think about something you can measure and something that you can come back 6 years later and say, we got it done, right? Here's the evidence in a Ziploc bag showing that, you know, that particular piece of art got done or something like that, or having something that's more measurable to that. Now, maybe art is by its nature less measurable than other things, but I don't know. I wonder whether there's a desire for something that we can come back to later and show what actually got done and what we're still working on.
Any other comments? Sarah, you have or is that okay, or?
Yeah, no, this is great. I guess the only kind of follow-up question I would have, well, a comment and then a question. So I agree with you, Ted, measurable outcomes would be awesome. And I think once we get more into the specific project opportunities, then we can start probably attaching dates and, you know, timeline, more of those specifics that we'll be able to measure. So thank you for bringing that up now. And then just a question, because I like that everyone, it sounds like, has gotten to a place of let's consolidate all of these things in some way. So I just have a question going back to what JB said, his 3 buckets: focus on funding strategies, develop the project list, and create opportunities for engagement. I just wanted to know, are kind of along those lines, does anybody else have a specific bucket that they feel hasn't been addressed yet that they might want to see come back in a refined version of this framework? Seeing none.
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
go for it.
I just think in the third bucket is good. Maybe we can also make it clear about to the different diverse and inclusive, that kind of concept there. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So the last piece for this one, which we've already alluded to a little bit, is the selection criteria. So the selection criteria that we put forth is very heavily based on the 4 public art pillars. And so here, here's the information that was included in the draft in your packet. And I agree. I think that, like, a lot of what we've already talked about tonight comes out in terms of this criteria. So I think that there's probably some additional information that can be pulled out of that focused actions piece and added here or added to the goals. But I want to just hear, you know, we got on this sort of path because of the last workshop when we started talking about acquisition guidelines. It seemed like everyone was really kind of excited about the public art pillars and wanted to attach the way we evaluate and select projects, or the way we evaluate and select artists and artwork for specific projects through that lens. So I just want to get some clarity or feedback from you all again on this one to see if this is on the right track in terms of selection criteria. Is there anything that's missing? Anything that seems off base?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I mean, I think that we've seen this a few times now, and I as I was reading through these, I felt like it's an improvement as from where we started.
Yeah, I like it too. Yeah, I like it.
Any, were you gonna go or?
Yeah, I do wonder, how, or it's a question for the council. I mean, do we as a council care about sustainability as a community value? Not depleting resources, not degrading resources, ensuring intergenerational equity. Do we care about at least encouraging discussions about how people can reduce their use of resources, reduce their carbon footprint? Do we care about conservation, efficiency? Are these values that are important? I think they are actually. Maybe maybe I live in a bubble or something, but I think a lot of community members care about these values and maybe under connection, you use the word sustainable under longevity. I think you're just referring to artworks, right? Not to broader conceptions of values there under longevity. It says collection care. That's the only place where you use the word sustainability. So it'd be great if there could be something in here about um, encouraging um, sustainability as a community value.
So I guess I'm maybe need clarification on that, because we are specifically talking about public art. We aren't talking about, broader events, activities, city council goals, or anything like that. It is very focused on public art. So are you looking for, um, a focus through themes, through the way in which art is made, through, the people who make art here in the community, through that process of really promoting the values of sustainability? Or are you asking for kind of a broader look at sustainability? Because I don't know, I think I think that public art can certainly help drive higher level goals of like the climate action plan. We're not going to promote or put forth any public art projects that are in, direct opposition to the climate action plan, for instance. But I guess I'm just kind of wondering, like, in your mind, like, what are you looking for in terms of how public art specifically, since we're talking about public art, will drive or encourage sustainability? If it's beyond how the piece is made or anything like that, what else can you say about that?
So an example would be, let's talk about, the LGBTQ community. Let's say the LGBTQ community plus community want to create a piece of public art to promote their values. And so that's a larger community value. And so in the same way, I think it would be like under connection. So we have inspiration, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. And then could we include sustainability? Because sustainability is all about building community amongst people so they can live their lives in a way that allows us to not deplete the planet's resources, to live in equitable, inclusive communities. Those are all part of the concept of sustainability. And just being because the city is proactive about talking about sustainability. So why not have a bullet point under connection, for instance, that encourages community discussions about sustainability and public art that promotes larger values relating to sustainability as the city has said it supports since 2006. I was here, I remember 2006, 2007, that the city council said we had a sustainable city. So it's in that light that I'm referring to it.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Jonathan.
Suzanne,
Could I add, I feel like to Jonathan's point that you have addressed the sustainability question and longevity with collection care. Can the proposed project be sustainably completed and maintained? And I don't know if this is if a issue statement about sustainability is appropriate I mean, that's just my feeling in this slide. But I think as far as sustainably completed and maintained, I think to me that would, if I was evaluating making a selection, I would prefer a piece of art or a performance or a activity that didn't waste resources, didn't buy 1,000 t-shirts and throw them away, they will get thrown away in a landfill. So maybe aprons are used that are used year to year, something like that. So I think I do like longevity. I like that sustainability is mentioned in the last item there.
yeah, I mean, I'll add I think Sarah, you're also asking like, what does this specifically mean? Like, I mean, if I was selecting artwork, I mean, the question is like, are we looking at the piece because the materials are sustainable? Like, are we going to prioritize someone that used recyclable materials versus someone who did not use recyclable materials? I mean, I think I agree with Suzanne that I think that longevity covers a lot of this because to me, it's like, how long is this piece going to last? Like, if this piece lasts 20 years and then we have to throw it away and then we have to get a new one, that's probably worse from a sustainability standpoint than someone who, I mean, the best option is to get something that lasts a while. And so I don't know. I mean, I think we do care about, I mean, I'm very concerned about like environmental sustainability in general. I just think in this specific context, there's only so much that you can do with like you're designing an art piece. And I don't think that we should like say what were the materials that it was made with as the defining characteristic, because I think that you're also looking at, as you're saying, the long term, how long will this piece last and what happens over time.
I'll also just do some more research about, because, lots of communities have their climate action plans. A lot of communities are really looking more at sustainability in terms of public art creation, more so than we are or have been. So I'll also do some research to just see what else is out there to try to get closer to the idea of or the inclusion of sustainability as really a key criteria or component. And I'll bring that back in October.
Any other comments? No.
Okay, great. All right. We've made it through our first item. Now on to everybody's favorite, public art policy. So I'm going to pick up where we left off for DIA session. And potentially now, since we've gone through a DIA session of artwork with this Arts Council, this may be a little more fresh for you, but what's on your screen right now is part of the DIA session process, specifically the who. So we looked at this for the acquisition guidelines, who is responsible for coming up with the program or the project, reviewing the materials, who has to approve a project, et cetera. And we have specific approvals that are outlined in the deaccession policy currently as well. So I wanted to just start with the who, because I know that sometimes getting a lot of people together or all these different steps in terms of different committees and all of that can be challenging. So I just wanted to hear some feedback from you all about kind of the who in the process. So for the first activity, identifying deaccession needs, currently the process outlines a couple pieces. So city staff will recommend artworks for consideration or evaluation for deaccession. And then the Arts Council appoints a subcommittee or can appoint a subcommittee of the Public Art Committee to evaluate and confirm the deaccessioning criteria. So per the current process, it recommends 5 arts professionals or experts, including a member of the Public Art Committee and an art conservator or curator. We currently do not have a Public Art Committee. We've kind of not dissolved, but set aside the committee structure while we're looking at this higher level public art project. So that's something to consider. I think also, you know, with our most recent deaccession, city staff worked with internal folks and other departments. We worked with the artists themselves. We worked with other consultants and experts. But, you know, there's also always opportunity to engage more folks like a curator or an art conservator. Those people are obviously here within the region. So I'll just start with that one, and then we'll work through the other 2. Any thought?
Can I
Who
just,
should be involved with identifying the needs?
can I just jump in? So, and I apologize, I don't have this in front of me, but at the meeting when we did this before, which was like 3 months ago or something, there was a similar discussion about accepting new pieces, right? And wasn't this like a similar who that included the Public Art Committee and including outside people? I mean, can we like do, I don't remember exactly what we settled on there. Like, can we do something similar that we did for that one here as well?
Yeah, we can definitely do something similar. I think the major difference is just the type of art professional that's called out in this policy versus the acquisition policy. So I think in the current acquisition guidelines and what we opted to keep was someone who's involved, like an active artist, a working artist would be the art professional. So, you know, we could easily change that to art conservator or curator or something like that with this policy and keep it similar if others are open to that.
Anyone? Not about my comment, any comments? No one? All right.
Okay.
Well, I think, so we're gonna take out the Public Art Committee piece because that doesn't technically exist, right?
Yeah, I think it would be reworded to something like if the Arts Council wants to appoint a committee, we would just say appoints a special committee for deaccession. And so it wouldn't have to be someone from the Public Art Committee. It could be from the entire body of the Arts Council. And similar to what we've done with public art selection panels in recent years, you know, 1 or 2 people from the board serve on that selection panel as the representatives of the Arts Council. So it would be something similar and aligned with the acquisition process,
Yeah.
is what I'm
And
hearing.
I think just being clear, like when we did the deaccession for the street names, we never went through a committee process.
Right.
And so just kind of carving out the opportunity for the Arts Council to skip to approval, I guess, is like what we did before. If
Okay.
we don't see the need for a subcommittee.
Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts? Sounds like no. Okay, so then again, in approving the deaccession recommendation, we'll take out Public Art Committee, maybe give hearing from JB some more leeway to just bring it to the full Arts Council first, depending on the project, rather than going to a committee for review and recommendation. I think something like a deaccession report is similar to what we created for the street name inlays. So I think that, you know, that's very much in staff's purview, as well as presenting, you know, a final recommendation to city council for approval if when we do a deaccession. Does that sound good? Okay, so kind of take out the requirement of a specific public art committee step every time, but we can always allow that opportunity if it's a big project or, you know, it's going to be, you know, there's 10 works of art that need to be a DSS. That will likely never happen, but something like that.
Yeah, I'm thinking like in certain projects, maybe those conservators and curators will be valuable. So, so the process, like is that the Arts Council discuss and think that could be the direction and then appoint or recruit some certain curators and conservators as the outside advisors to further even legal, I think in some there are some like legal opinions. Mm.
Okay. So as we're kind of talking through this, I'm thinking that maybe sort of again building off the recent work with the street name inlays, maybe the kind of first step is that city staff identify the needs based on, you know, what we know in terms of projects that are going to impact public art, deterioration of public art, all of that. And we present it to the full Arts Council as, you know, the governing body and provide, depending on the project, a suite of options. So one option could be set up a committee with, you know, curator, outside representatives, and go away and work on a proposal for removing a work of art from the collection, all the way to just, you know, again, similar to what we did, kind of remove the committee aspect, all of that additional review and kind of staff bring it back again to the Arts Council for, so it's instead of using the same process every time, it's kind of more of a decision tree based on the project. So if we know it's going to be X, we'll go down this route. If we know it's Y, we'll go down that route. Does that sound doable? Okay.
I just think in this process, should we also listen to the community in certain way?
Yeah, and that was actually going to be my comment. I found in the meantime, the acquisition guide that we talked about before, and like there was a comment about finding some interested constituency to be as part of that. And I don't know who that would be, but obviously with the street names, like the Historical Society hadn't heard about it. And you know, the earlier that you can engage people, I think the less complicated it gets. And if they can, I mean, how you identify who the notes say interested constituency, less prescribed in the acquisition process. And so I don't know how we can outline that with detail beforehand, but in general, if we can find someone like that to help at some point in this process, I think it would be good, just because we keep talking about public engagement.
Okay, great. Okay, the third piece, implement deaccession. So this just really goes back to what we are going to do with the work of art once we decide to deaccession it. I do think that, so this outlines public art committee considers options and then staff carry out the selected action and update the public art records. I think this could also be part of that decision tree concept, like if it's again something very significant or the Arts Council is really interested in pursuing a sale or something like that, I think then we would have the option to appoint a committee or work as a full body to work on that. And then, of course, staff carry out whatever the action is based on the boards. So I'll work that in to an update. Okay. So this is the deaccession criteria that's outlined in the current policy. So basically, these are the criteria. If one of these are met, it's grounds for bringing it forth for deaccession. I think that if anyone has major thoughts about these tonight, please share them now. Otherwise, I think this is one that is pretty standard. And we could potentially reserve it for a second review instead of walking through all these now, depending on what you all want to do. I'm going to try to get to something a little more fun. Deaccession's not very fun. I'll admit that.
Any comments here?
Okay. All right. So the last piece, the maybe more fun policy, and this relates to the email that Irene forwarded from a community member requesting that the Arts Council take up a public art project at the lid. So in addition to, we've been talking a lot through this process about a specific type of public art project. It's what we call our Art in Public Places program. And those are primarily the projects, again, that are attached to the capital program and largely funded by the 1% program. We also have two other types of public art projects that we do. We talked about these earlier on in the process, but haven't talked much about them until now. One is community public art projects. So this is, I think, right in line with the email from the community member. It's a request from the community to install a permanent public art project. A recent acquisition is Twin Foxes, which is the fox sculpture outside of City Hall. So this is the idea if a community member or a community group reaches out to the Arts Council and says, we think that you should do X, and we're going to help fund it, or we want to help create it. Those types of things really fall in this community public art project bucket. The other one is temporary public art projects. So these are short-term exhibits that are generated by the city, by Arts Council, by community members or others. Very recent projects include the Island Lanterns exhibit that we've done over the past few years, and then Prairie of Possibilities, which there's an image of on the screen right now, which was brought forth by a local community member who's part of an artist collective and wanted to do this project. So again, these are short-term, they are not permanent works of art. Sometimes they do come with requests for funding. Sometimes they, someone has an idea and they just need a space to do it. But we don't really have a process to evaluate either of these types of projects. In the past, I would say that if we have used an evaluation process, it's been kind of the same criteria that we've used for permanent acquisitions through the Art in Public Places program. So I think that, from my perspective, I think that using the eventual criteria that you identify or agree upon for the Art in Public Places program is a good place to start. I do think that there maybe is opportunity to include some supplemental criteria for either of these projects. So I have a couple just thoughts on things that you might consider in terms of additional criteria. The first is through the project proposal process. So, are we administering a call for artists for community or temporary public art projects? Once a year, we'll do a call for a public art project to mount at Mercerdale Park, that kind of thing. Or are we accepting proposals on a rolling basis that we haven't solicited for, something like a community member's idea about a mural or a project in a park, something like that. Additionally, when will proposals be accepted? Again, kind of on a rolling basis, a specific deadline. And then should individuals be required to demonstrate community support for the project, something like requiring a project sponsor from the community, submitting letters of support, things like that, that really show that it's not just an individual or, a specific community group, but there's broader community interest potentially for a project. And then in terms of the artwork itself, what types of community or temporary public art projects will be considered? Are we interested in any type of medium, or are we thinking, over the next 6 years, we only want to look at murals, or we only want to look at light art, things like that. And then where would projects be installed or exhibited? Would they be on any city property? Are there specific locations that we want to identify? Those types of things. So I know we haven't talked a ton about this, but I did want to get the conversation going since Irene raised it with the group, and we will talk more about this in future meetings, but I just wanted to put it out there now and see if there's any ideas related to supplemental criteria for either of these types of public art projects.
So can I ask a quick question? Just what's kind of the technical difference between community public art projects and art in public places?
So the difference is really that the Art in Public Places program is, so two things. Art in Public Places program is typically, but not always, but typically attached to capital projects and is typically either solely or largely funded by the 1% fund. A community project is something that maybe isn't identified in the work plan explicitly. So, you know, we knew we were going to do public art project for the docks at Luther Burbank, but we don't know if we're going to do a mural at the Lid. We don't necessarily have that in our work plan. That's kind of a separate piece that comes more through the community realm organically as opposed to planned more long term.
Got it.
I think one of the things that comes to my mind right away is the opportunities and identifying those both for this board, for city council, and for the community. I don't want to see us going off on tangents when we have a high, we've identified an opportunity and we have a high opportunity or, you know, impetus or action happening in that direction. I think that sharing that with the community so that they can integrate into that is a really good idea. So if a mural, you know, if there's a wall that could be a mural, identifying that as an opportunity, and then they come in and say, yeah, we're the community group that wants to do that. But I want to be careful that, you know, every time an idea comes along, we obviously can't take action on it. And I'm also a little concerned that, you know, maybe well thought out funded opportunities are passing by that have strong community support. And I'm thinking about the Stacks project up there, and that just seems to be, I've never heard any more about it. So that bothers me that we don't seem to be following up on that. I don't know the situation on that, but so opportunities, identifying those opportunities and committing to that artistic palette that's out there for us.
Yeah.
And for the, you know, for the community.
Jonathan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, have there been any arts projects that have actually been created by the Arts Council? And how, let's say 3 of us had a desire to work collectively on a new project, how we may want to think about how we would approve something like that or even discuss it. Because we can't even have a meeting of more than 3 people, right, without having an open meeting. So I'm just curious about your comments about that.
Yes, so there are many public art projects that were generated initially by specific Arts Council members in the past. I think what we're trying to do through this work plan is identify those opportunities earlier on. So as opposed to, you know, maybe a single Arts Council member proposing, I'm just going to keep talking about murals because they're on my mind now, mural on the wall, on a wall or something like that. Identified maybe what Suzanne is saying, okay, we know there's these 6 opportunity areas that we either want the community to bring forth an idea and help us develop, or we as an Arts Council member like this idea enough to take it on and want to try to develop it and propose it. So I think that it would go through a similar process, whatever the proposal development process becomes. We don't really have anything like that in place anymore right now, but we can I hope, figure it out through this process and the work plan.
So a community public art project still would need to find some sort of funding source. And it could be the 1% fund, right? Or any other means of getting funding for it. To me, this art opportunities list that we're going to create eventually, could bracket it into those. I'm hearing 3 different types of art projects: art in public places, community art, and then temporary art. And I think it's a really big opportunity to have that be a part of the public engagement so that people can see that list, interact with it, say that if they see that there's something on the list that they really would support, then they have an opportunity to speak up and voice that that they want that to happen. So, I think this list and making it public and making it an interactive piece is what would help guide us too. And then we can go out and find and prioritize funding through our process. But
Yeah, and I think the community should be feeding into the list. So it's not like we
Right.
create the list and then they jump on it. They want to, like they were saying, here's a wall. We want that something to be included as an opportunity.
yeah, inviting people to or encouraging people to add to the list and identify those
Yeah, I
opportunities.
can't,
I think
and it gets so much more creativity and inclusivity because you're saying, maybe they've discovered something that on a part of the island we've never even been on,
Right.
So.
I'm just thinking like in community center, we have this community coffee. It's maybe it's a good window to solicit, like talk to whether Arts Council can have a mailbox or something that tangible there.
Suggestions.
Yeah, they can give us some thoughts and a suggestion like that. That could be. And also what we still, for example, like our Arts Council meeting, like in December or the end of year, we can have a rough plan for the next year. Instead of randomly have thoughts and ideas, unless there's some specific urgent coming up next year, otherwise we can have a little bit more planned, structured.
So I'll say something. I first have a comment about one thing and then a separate question, but my comment is that, just in my opinion, like we're talking about like these separate buckets of permanent pieces, but I guess I don't necessarily see it like that. I think that's like we have art in public places, community driven, arts council driven, whatever. Like I think those are all the same. Like we have permanent art pieces that we can do in the city, and we have to figure out how to fund them, and we have to figure out if we want to do them. And I think it would be good, as has already been said, if we knew like what the plan was for going forward and what the opportunities are. You said we knew there was going to be an art piece at the docks, but we didn't need to do an art piece at the docks. We could have just not done an art piece there, and we could have decided that there was another project somewhere else in the city that we think was a higher priority. And I think that we should look at the body of ideas that we have, whether it's an arts council member that's doing it, proposing it, or a community member or a public project. And we should be looking and saying, what do we want that matches the goals with all of these things? And we have the funding from Art in Public Places. If we want to use that, we can. If we need to fundraise, we could do that too. I'll do a pitch for everyone here and anybody who's listening that, you can buy a medallion that was an Art in Public Places project. Right now, it's on the city's website if you want to contribute, and and like that's a great opportunity for people, and we can do that more often. But that's my comment, which is that like I see this as one body of things, and we should look at what all of our opportunities are. My question is not on the permanent one; it's actually on the temporary. I'm not clear to what scale we're considering a temporary art project. and who is deciding that? Like, I mean, I get the examples that you have. I know that like in the past, and I can't, was this Island Lanterns where we had like MyVal had like these like something at Mercerdale that was that the Island Lanterns also? And we just moved it to like different places. But like the pumpkin walk, like is that art? Like what like is that not art because that's, you know, so temporary? And so why are we deciding that the pumpkin walk is is too temporary, but Island Lanterns isn't temporary enough? And like who's making the call on deciding those types of things, I guess? I don't know. I'm just trying to understand like what we
Right.
would create in a policy in terms of what are we creating a committee for to approve, and what is like somebody just needs to decide, or be like this is minimal cost if we let the community make these things.
Right. And I think that that is a fair enough policy, if that's the policy related to temporary art, if you wanna do it. You know, I would say the two examples that we gave, Island Lanterns and Prayer of Possibilities. Island Lanterns kind of came up organically between staff and local community groups, especially with MyVol. Prayer of Possibilities was something that a community member brought to us and sought funding for it. So that one is a little bit, that piece is a little more challenging. You know, are we going to approve funding requests for short-term installations, or are we just going to say, yeah, sounds great. Staff says you can do it in Mercerdale these dates and go on. So I think it's up to the Arts Council on how much of a role you want to play specifically in temporary art projects, or if it's, you know, it's just a goal that you want to encourage local community groups and artists and others to mount temporary art projects, and, you know, they need staff to buy off, or they need to present the idea to the Arts Council first, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Daniel made a really good point of when we're presented with ideas that do require funding, especially from the 1%, it should be reviewed as a group, this group of, if we accept this, are we missing out on another opportunity? And being able to have a master list of where those opportunities are, and allowing the discussion for us to say, you know, no, that's not the priority right now because we want to pursue this other effort. That I totally agree with that.
Great.
You know, you said somewhere about the call for artists, maybe once a year, the city should have a call for opportunities. So if a cultural group has a celebration they want to, you know, engage the community with, or it's a band that wants to have a concert, or I don't know what it would be, but I think we're probably kind of narrow in our silo here. And it would be fun to reach out to the community and say, call for artistic opportunities, you know, at least once a year, and hear what's out there, what people are thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, that we've got
Second.
tents that we put up for summer celebration and music in the park, and there's events throughout the year that it'd be easy to have this kind of be a side little piece on a table.
I just saw second that idea, like once a year. Call for idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we keep bringing up public engagement and trying to like,
Mhm.
I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, I think everybody knows here. I mean, I will say, because like last year we went to mostly music in the park, and like I was there and at the booth and was trying to talk to people, and like it was a challenge because people weren't there to talk to people from the city, and I talked to like a handful of people, but I think trying to connect with people. I mean, all the ideas are good. It's just it's a challenge to try to figure out how to get the community to actually engage. Sometimes you have to be pretty proactive trying to reach out to people.
But we did do that community outreach a year or so ago, where we tried to outreach to all the different art groups in the community too.
Yeah.
So that would be a place to start as well.
Yeah.
Ask them, you know, have you identified something or want to work towards something? It'd be nice to have, you know, a few people here engaged. But I also think the city's internet, you know, website and email or newsletter I mean, once a year, why not say, that we're taking suggestions?
It'd also be nice if we had a way of finding out what our interests are outside of a formal meeting, like a retreat type of thing. So we can just get to know one another a little better, what our interests are. The city council does that, right? You have retreats every year.
Yeah, but it's still an open meeting, so.
But you have unstructured discussions, though, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Mm.
So just as a thought, I don't know if that's something we've done in the past. That'd be great. I'd like to third the idea of making an annual call to everybody in the community, not just invited guests, but
Mhm.
everybody. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Well, then I'm going to stop there. Ooh, again. Sorry.
Is that the end of your presentation?
Yes, that is the end. Sorry. The only thing I will say is just to give you a couple of updates related to public art. So the restoration of the mosaics down at Luther Burbank is complete. If you all have a chance to go down to the playground before the weather turns crummy, I highly encourage you to do that. And when we sent out the agenda packet for this meeting, we included a request for help in testing out our new story platform. I can work with Raven to send that information out again, but we have updated our story platform and I'm just looking for some beta testers, who better than the Arts Council to assist with that. And we will be rolling it out to the community next year. And then the last thing is we will be back on October 16th, and I will have an update about the street name inlays, opportunity or potential for replacing that project, some updates on research that we've done, as well as continue the conversation about the framework for developing public art projects. And I will commit, I've been holding off on the project opportunities list. I'm hearing loud and clear, everyone wants to start talking about that. So I will commit to presenting a high level, very, very rough draft project opportunities list to start talking about. And I will include a call for your ideas as well, either ideas you've heard from the community over the last year or ideas you've come up with in your own circles, so we can get that on the list to start too. So thank you so much for the great discussion tonight. I really appreciate it. I know this was a heavy feedback meeting, but I appreciate your engagement and your really fantastic feedback. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Sarah. I'm going to get us through the formal part of this here. So we're going to move on to other business and absences. Counselors, does anyone have any planned absence for our next regular meeting scheduled on October 16th?
Yes,
Okay, remote.
I
Yeah,
will be out.
and you're going to be gone.
I will be out of town.
Out of town, okay.
Yeah.
Not available.
Dial in remotely or will?
Maybe it's hard to
Okay.
do that.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm.
As a reminder, I'm supposed to remind the Arts Council here that city staff communicates with arts counselors via our city email addresses. And please remember to check them regularly. If you have any questions, please contact our staff liaison, Katie Herzog. I will say I've added my email to my phone so I can get them there in your email, normal email apps. That way you don't have to remember to check them quite as much. And so there being no other business to come before the Arts Council, the time is now 7 p.m. on the dot and the meeting is adjourned. Counselors, please stay seated until city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Good evening and thank you for joining us.